That's not what I want to do.
Get started.
Okay. Good morning. My name is Jeff Rees. I'm the president of the Georgia Robotics Alliance, and I'm here to talk to you a little bit about some of the more mundane things about running a team. Uh, the I've done this for a number of years. This is my 22nd year involved with FIRST, and I've been involved with a few teams. And one of the biggest issues I find with every team I've ever been involved with is money. I don't care if it's an FML team or an FRC team. It costs some money to do robotics. If you're working through a school system, the school system's financial structure, their mechanism for handling expenses, has always been a bit difficult. They're just not geared to the demands of a robotics team. So the first team I was working with, we ran into this, and in an effort to try to resolve it, went down a chain of events. We found that talking to people, trying to get them to give us money, we're a group of students, we have no reputation. Yeah, we have a school name, but we had no real information about it. Why am I giving you, a bunch of kids, money? So we decided that what we needed to do, all right, what am I doing here? What we needed to do was get ourselves some sort of a structure. So we incorporated, and the team I was working with incorporated. When you do so, you have to establish a purpose for your corporation. So we essentially told the state of Georgia that we were going to support activities of STEM and various robotics programs and encourage their growth. And as such, we would have the right to accept money and disperse it out to teams and activities we felt were appropriate. So we filed the paperwork with the state, and shazam, we were incorporated as a state of Georgia nonprofit entity. Now, you can see on here that the first team I worked with was Henry Grady, now Midtown Robotics. And that worked okay. It helped us raise a little bit of money. But what we found was that as mentors, we were carrying an awful lot of the expenses of the team through our own personal accounts, through our own personal credit cards. While the school would reimburse us, they didn't reimburse us for sales tax. They didn't reimburse us for some things that they didn't think were quote unquote necessary. And that, if you've run a team, you know that that can get expensive. 6-8% of your team's expenses coming out of your pocket mounts up. So the next step in this process was to decide, well, let me back up a second. I ended up leaving the Grady team and got involved with several other teams and went back and amended our registration in the state of Georgia to be more general in terms. Rather than being tied to the Grady High School, we became the Georgia Robotics Alliance, covering Georgia and the Southeast. And again, it's just a state document. We're recognized in the state. Now, to get out of that dealing with finances and dollars and so on and so forth, and losing money through the sales tax arrangement, we applied to the to the IRS to become a 501c3 organization. Now, becoming a corporation in the state of Georgia is simple. You file a little bit of paperwork, you file a statement with the state, you pay a small administrative fee, application fee, and you get back a registration with the state. IRS is a little more of a hassle. You have to jump through a number of hoops, and you have to prove to them that you're going to be a nonprofit and that you're going to keep the proper records and so on and so forth. Well, again, we did this through the Henry Grady operation, and then we changed it to be for the state. So, for the wider environment, basically the state of Georgia and the Southeast. So what is a 501c3? IRS regulations are rather arcane and complicated, but a 501c3 is an organization organized under a specific title of the IRS regulation, Title 26 of the United States Code. And essentially, it allows an entity to operate as a nonprofit in the entire United States. And as such, it can be exempted from federal taxes. To operate as a 501c3, the organization must be open to the public and organized exclusively for some specific purposes. Among them are charitable donations or charitable contributions, an educational entity, something that supports scientific development, testing for public safety, fostering national and international amateur sports competitions. Well, to me, first hits all of those. I'm not so sure testing for public safety can be totally included, but we are very concerned about keeping our students safe. So I think an argument can be made. So our organization checked all those boxes, and we were granted the 501c3 status. Now, there's a couple of reasons why we chose to pursue this. As I mentioned earlier, a group of kids, high school kids, asking for money. Why is any organization going to give you money? You're just a group of kids. A local group might, a local entity might, but the big donors, the folks who constitute significant dollar resources being given out to support charitable organizations, they're looking for something a little more substantial. Being a corporation, you're an entity. You've gone through some exercises. Being a 501c3, okay, the federal government recognizes you. It's a little bit easier to get through the doors and get people to take you seriously and get them to talk to you about perhaps donating money. So that 501c3 gives you the opportunity to use these things. The organization, we don't pay federal income tax, we don't pay unemployment tax, and we don't pay any of a number of things. Unfortunately, the state of Georgia still requires us to pay state sales taxes. I haven't figured a way around that yet. But the 501c3 does allow you to receive government and private grants, to use it to help with funding, to talk to major donors, to get them to recognize you as an entity. And it allows you to perhaps collect money from a source that would not recognize a small high school or elementary school, middle school entity. That organization has to operate within the laws pertaining to the 501c3 and has some certain things that have to be done to keep our status valid so that we can extend that status to member organizations. And because we are serving the public, we have to operate with full transparency. That translates to the GRA must submit and file certain documents with the IRS every year, demonstrating that we have taken the money in that we've gotten, used it for the appropriate results, and made our finances available for anyone who wants to look at them. We'll talk about that in a minute. We can't serve any private interest, including my personal one, my boards, anybody who's involved with it directly. Anything that we bring in has to go to the purpose that we have established and organized ourselves for. We cannot pursue political means. We can't campaign, we can't support, we can't lobby. However, we can espouse, in the general sense, the support for STEM activities and science type things and educational type stuff. But we cannot go out and campaign or endorse a specific candidate. It's just not within the bounds of the regulations covering a 501c3. There are other organizations that can do that, but not us. One of the biggest benefits, we're now a recognized 501c3 non-profit organization. There are a number of, for lack of better terms, clearinghouses that major donors, folks like Coca-Cola, folks like Novellus, folks like Google, folks like Lockheed, folks like the government look to prove or to satisfy their own internal requirements that yes, this is a valid nonprofit. We are registered right now with the Bonterra and Benevity, both of which are major clearinghouses for big organizations. We're recognized as a nonprofit for GoFundMe and PayPal, which give you some benefits should you decide to use those platforms for funding. And because we are recognized, we're a lot more likely to be received favorably when you go to apply for a government or a private organization grant. They have confidence because we've been vetted by these major platforms that this money is going to go to a valid nonprofit. They get the benefit of tax deductibility of their contributions. That's one of the major advantages, that you can demonstrate that you are a legitimate nonprofit. And if a donor wishes to give you money, they can rely upon the status and claim it on their taxes as a tax deductible donation. Yeah, too many buttons. To give you some idea how this works, essentially, it's just a very simple ladder diagram. The IRS and the state of Georgia both recognize the Georgia Robotics Alliance as a corporate entity. The GRA maintains a banking relationship with Wells Fargo Bank. It's just evolved over the years, and when it was started, that was the bank that was chosen. You may or may not have any opinion of Wells Fargo, but it is where we do our banking business. And then under that banking account, we, the GRA, provide support to teams who are members of the Georgia Robotics Alliance. We do this by providing what's called a fiscal sponsorship. The GRA becomes a fiscal sponsor for a group. And essentially, as such, we can extend our tax-exempt umbrella to your group. This means that the donations and the contributions you might receive under the GRA's umbrella pass through the GRA, and we put those into what's termed a restricted account. Now, that restricted account is a sub-account of the GRA's account. And we'll talk about that in a second here, how that part of it works. Now, the IRS regulations tell me I cannot operate in what's termed a pass-through. There has to be some benefit, there has to be some reward for the benefit we're extending to you. And it's perfectly logical and acceptable for the fiscal sponsor to charge an administrative fee for their services. And as long as there is some recognition and some value obtained from the member organizations, the IRS is perfectly happy. Now, we, the GRA, set out to make this as painless as possible. Raising money is a major challenge. Robotics is expensive. The GRA does not want to take money from teams that have raised it, but the IRS requires there has to be some recognition of the services that we're providing. So you'll see when we talk a little further down the road that there is a small fee for this process. The other thing that we're going to keep in mind is where this money actually belongs, which again, we'll discuss a little bit later. All right. Essentially, the fiscal sponsorship operates the project or the group, whatever your organization is trying to do, under that umbrella of the 501c3 organization that we have. And operating that way ensures that any donations, any contributions, any funds you receive under the umbrella of the 501c3 provided by the GRA are tax exempt, federal tax exempt, and are tax deductible for donors to the extent that it is a true donation. If you collect your team dues or some fee for which a member gets a benefit, if you sell clothing, if you as I say, collect team dues, whatnot. Only the value, only the contribution in excess of that value is tax deductible. Now, this is the same thing you get when you talk to PBS or NPR. If they give you something, theoretically, your donation is only exempt to the extent that you've given more than it's worth. IRS doesn't ask me to account for it. We're relying upon you to take care of that, and nobody's going to come looking. So just be aware that if you collect money under the GRA's umbrella, it needs to be donations. The fiscal sponsor, the GRA, serves as the administrative overseer and home for the cause. Essentially, funds funnel through the GRA's account and are distributed to your personal account, your team's personal account, your restricted account. And we then take those funds and put them in your account. At that point in time, they become your group's funds. You can do what you wish with them. We're not going to try to supervise. We're not going to try to tell you that you have to come through some sort of an approval process. But what you do have to do is use them in support of the stated goals of the GRA, support of robotics and STEM activities. The example I like to use is if you have a team and you want to go to Orlando for a competition, all the expenses going to the competition and going to Orlando are covered. That's part of what GRA does. If you decide to stay for 2 extra days and go visit Disney World, that's not covered. We're not here to entertain the kids. We're here to help them with their STEM organization. Excuse me. It's just a matter of how you account for your funds when you report to the GRA at the end of the year. So what do you get if you join and take a fiscal sponsorship? Well, you get tax favor status. You get recognition from potential vendors and major platforms. And it helps to establish your group as an entity and a worthy, deserving recipient of donations from donors who may not be familiar with your specific group. First is well recognized. Being a first team that's a member of a 501c3 and a member of a recognized recipient of funds goes a long way to helping convince donors to support you. It's an intangible, but having worked with several teams, I find it much easier to convince a corporate entity that I'm a deserving recipient of their funds when I have some sort of a structure, umbrella of validation tied to me. Your mileage may vary, but it's been very helpful in my case. Okay. Because you've decided you want to be a GRA member and obtain a fiscal sponsorship, there are some things you have to do to help the GRA maintain its status. There is an agreement between the GRA and your group, a fiscal sponsorship agreement, that spells out your obligations, what you're going to get, and what you have to do to protect the GRA's tax advantage status. You've got to support our goals, STEM-related programs in robotics in Georgia and the Southeast. You can't get involved in political activities. By that, I mean you can't go campaign for a representative, a mayor, a governor, something of this nature. But you can go support a political action that supports STEM activities in schools, that supports even STEM activities in your specific school. You cannot give them money, but you can support them. Every year, the GRA is required to submit documentation to the federal government, to the IRS. It's termed a Form 990, where we account for the money received, the money that was expended, and any money that we may happen to have still on hand. Well, to do that, I have to collect information from your team. You're required to keep sufficiently complete and accurate books to account for money you receive, where it went, how you spent it. Was it spent on official activities or unofficial activities or whatnot, and provide a yearly summary to the GRA of your expenses and your incomes so that the GRA can consolidate those into the document we have to submit to the IRS. In the highly unlikely event that the IRS decides to audit the GRA, you would be required to provide whatever backup the IRS might happen to require. It's not a complicated thing. Everybody's keeping some sort of books. You can do it with very formal bookkeeping. You can do it with simple spreadsheets. It's not a complicated requirement on your part. The GRA's interest is basically how much money did you get in? How much money did you spend? If you take whatever's the difference between the money brought in and the money taken spent over the year, add it to your starting bank account, that should equal your ending bank account. It's very high level on your part. But if we do have to go to the IRS with more information, we would turn to you to help you document what's involved. Again, you've got to comply with the fiscal sponsorship agreement. It spells out what's going on. And you got to provide the financial information. Because again, GRA has to report to the IRS every year to maintain its status. Okay, I've mentioned this term a couple of times, restricted account. The fiscal sponsorship requirements under the IRS say that I can establish what they term as a restricted account under the GRA's umbrella. Essentially, this is a sub-account of the GRA's finances. What it boils down to, for all practical purposes, you will have a normal checking account with the Wells Fargo Bank. It will operate for any purposes you want as a normal checking account. You can make deposits to it. You can make withdrawals. You can write checks. You will have a debit card. You will have normal access to your funds. But one thing I need to make clear, and this is something that sometimes people get a little confused by, the way the IRS regulations are written, this is a sub-account of the GRA. And as such, it is considered an asset of the GRA. What that translates to in their terms is it's still, quote unquote, GRA's money. I will tell you right now that the GRA does not touch these accounts in any shape, form, or fashion unless you specifically request us to and grant permission. Occasionally, to get funds to Big First for registrations or such, it's sometimes faster to go through the GRA. With your agreement, we will transfer funds and do that sort of thing for you. We will transfer funds that we receive into your account. If there happens to be a bill that needs to be paid, that again, GRA is a better way to do it. With your permission, we will transfer funds out. But other than that, I don't even look at your accounts. They are yours. They're yours to be done with as you see fit. The only time I might have to look at it is if the accounting at the end of the year somehow doesn't quite jive. Happens very seldom, but every now and then I have to go in and figure out where the GRA's means and methods for accounting and whatever system you have don't quite mesh. But I will contact you before we do anything like that. So this is what it kind of looks like. Wells Fargo owns a GRA account. The GRA owns several restricted accounts, one for each team. And essentially, your account is separate, it's independent, and serves your team, your group, and your group only. Yes, the GRA can see them because they are quote unquote GRA accounts, but nobody sees them except for the GRA management and yourself. Nobody can get to your money except your team. Nobody can get to anything related to it other than you folks. For all practical purposes, you have an independent account, just like it would be if you walked up to Wells Fargo and asked to open a team account. But it's under the GRA's umbrella, which makes it tax favored, which is the whole point of this exercise. Okay, should this be of interest to you? How would you go about joining the GRA? Well, it's really a pretty simple process. We have a basic application collecting some just general information, what your team or group is, what it wants to do, what programs it's involved in, just so we have some idea that your group fits with the GRA's goals and overall scheme and practices. You submit that, and it goes to our GRA's board of 7 people, board of directors, who review it. They may have a question or two, but generally, if you've filled it out, they will grant their approval. When you've been approved by the board, you'll get a fiscal sponsorship agreement, or I may send it earlier if you ask for it, so you can see what you're signing up for. You complete the fiscal sponsorship agreement and send it back, and I will schedule a meeting with the GRA representatives. The way we're set up, we have to have 2 official GRA members appear at the bank along with any of your groups, people that you want to have on this account. And we will establish a restricted account for your team's usage. When you leave that bank office, you will have a bank account in your name and the ability to use it from that point forward. Once the account is established, you can go to any Wells Fargo bank in the world and do your business. The initial establishment is done through the Piedmont Peachtree branch in Buckhead, simply because the bank officer who knows how to do this and keeps us in compliance with the IRS, her office happens to be there. But again, once we've done that, the rest is just a normal bank account. Go any place you want to go, and you're in business. If you've got any questions, you can reach me at the Georgia Robotics Alliance at comcast.net. We have a website, georgiaroboticsalliance.org. Or if you've got any questions you want to have answered now, we've got time in this session. I'll be happy to answer questions. If there's anything that wasn't clear or you want any more explanation, just let me know. Any questions? Thundering silence. Okay, well, I hope this was helpful. Having been through this with a couple teams, the corporation isn't bad. Getting yourself to be a 501c3 on your own, it's not innately difficult, but it is a hassle. And so when it became appropriate, I decided to extend the one I had to other teams. Right now, we've got 18 teams working through this platform. We'd be happy to have you join us if that's appropriate for your particular organization. Again, you can reach me at Georgia Robotics Alliance at comcast.net, or there's a contact button on the website. Okay?
I don't see any questions, so I think that would be it.
Yeah, I don't see any questions. I don't, if everybody's happy, you get an extra long break.
All right, do you want me to end the meeting?
If no one wants to jump in here, if nobody's got questions, we got, I see what, 19 participants. If I answered everybody's questions, great. If nobody's got anything to say, yeah, we can end.
All right, that will be all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.